Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Lead Center webinar. This is a National Employment First website launch that is being presented collaboratively by the Lead Center and the Office of Disability Employment Policy at ODEP, Social Dynamics, and Alterum Institute. This is Rebecca Salon. I'm Project Director for the Lead Center. Before we launch into the content, I wanted to turn this over to my colleague Nakia Matthews to give you some housekeeping details so that you can all fully participate. Nakia?
Thank you, Rebecca. The audio for today's webinar is being broadcast through your computer. Please make sure that your speakers are turned on or that your headphones are plugged in. You can control the audio broadcast via the audio broadcast panel. If you accidentally close this panel, you can reopen it by going to the Communicate menu at the top of your screen and choosing Join Audio Broadcast. If you do not have sound capabilities on your computer, or if you prefer to listen by phone, you can dial the toll or toll-free number that you see here and enter the meeting code. Please note that you do not need to enter an attendee ID. Real-time captioning is provided during this webinar. The captions can be found in the Media Viewer panel, which appears in the lower right-hand corner of the webinar platform. You can make the Media Viewer panel larger if you'd like. You can minimize some of the other windows like chat or Q&A. And if you do not need the captions, you can always minimize the Media Viewer panel. We will have time at the end of the presentation today for questions. Please use the Q&A box to submit any questions you have during the webinar, or you may use the chat feature to send questions to me, the host, Nakia Matthews. If you are listening by phone and not logged into the webinar, you may also ask questions by emailing them to me at nmatthews@ndi-inc.org. Please note that this webinar is being recorded and that the materials will be placed on the Lead Center website at the URL you see below. If you experience any technical difficulties during this webinar, please use the chat box to send me a message, or you may email me at nmatthews@ndi-inc.org. And I'm going to turn it back over to Rebecca.
Thank you so much, Nakia. For those of you who are new to the Lead Center, we are the National Center on Leadership for the Employment and Economic Advancement of People with Disabilities. We're a collaborative of disability, workforce, and economic empowerment organizations led by National Disability Institute with funding from the U.S. Department of Labor's Office of Disability Employment Policy. Our mission is to advance sustainable individual and systems-level change that results in improved, competitive, integrated employment and economic self-sufficiency outcomes for people across the spectrum of disabilities. And now I'd like to turn this over to Serena Lowe. I believe Serena may be having some connection difficulties. Chris Button, are you able to?
Hello?
Chris, I think you're unmuted. I think Serena is having some connection difficulties.
Right. So while we're waiting for Serena to get in, let me just say that on behalf of ODEP, we are thrilled to be launching this web portal today. Serena has been working really hard with the Social Dynamics and Alterum and LEAD contractors and grantees to make this available to everyone, and we are just really thrilled. We thank those of you who are dialing in today to listen and find out about how useful this web portal is going to be. And I think you will feel that it will be very useful after you see all of the incredible data that's going to be made available to you. I did get an email from Serena. She is having difficulty getting in, so let's go ahead until she joins and keep moving. Rebecca, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Chris. So today's presenters are Doug Clayman and Danielle Herbert from Social Dynamics and Chris Weaver from Altarum Institute. And with that, I think I will turn it over to Doug, Danielle, and Chris to present on this very exciting website launch.
What looks like a few hundred people on the phone or on the webinar today, going through this webinar with us and learning more about the Employment First website. I'm the president of Social Dynamics, and we have been working with Serena now for over a year to develop the website that we're going to show you today. So the Employment First website, as you know, is part of the Lead Center website. It's a kind of a component within the Lead Center website, which gives the user not only access to the Employment First data, but also a lot of information on various Lead Center initiatives, and related disability employment policy issues. The Employment First website was a concept that Serena and a number of people at ODEP came up with over a year ago, and we've worked with her and a number of her colleagues to implement their vision for a system that provides useful information to researchers, policy analysts, practitioners, consumers, family members, and students interested in disability issues. So hopefully, as we move forward with the Employment First website, that it will be used by a range of different kinds of stakeholders as we continue to develop the website. Our partner, Altarum Institute, you'll hear from Chris Weaver in a few minutes. He represents Altarum. They designed the website and developed the underlying databases that all the information is stored in. Social Dynamics' role is to collect all the quantitative and policy data that you'll see today, and we update that information on a quarterly basis. So we're going to take about 40 minutes right now to walk you through the system, and we know that there are a lot of people with us today, and you may have a number of questions as we go through it. What you should do is submit questions via the webinar system, and we will answer some of your questions at the conclusion of a presentation, and then over the next few days, we'll prepare an email for everybody, and we'll send out all of the responses to your questions. But keep sending the questions in. Give us information on what you think, what you'd like to change about the system, how it could be enhanced to be even more useful to people. So as we move forward, we're going to start by going through each screen, and Chris is going to walk us through that. We'll provide a quick description of its purpose, each screen or each button, and how it works and the various functions of the system. Danielle Herbert, my colleague from Social Dynamics, and I will discuss data sources, outcomes, and policy analysis. So we'll give you some background on where everything came from. So let's go to the system itself. The first home page that we're going to show you gives you a national snapshot of the web system and a national snapshot of all the states that are currently in the system.
Thanks,
Doug. Do we have that up?
Yep, no, not yet, Doug. Thanks, Doug. This is Chris. And just for everybody, I'm going to share my screen now. And it may open in a new window, or it may open within the webinar window, depending on what system you're participating from. So bear with me 1 second here, and we'll get that website up for everyone. There we go. So as you heard Doug mention, this is the landing page, and this site is live, and this site can be accessed via the URL employmentfirst.leadcenter.org. So please feel free after the webinar. We encourage you to go to it and use the site and give us any feedback that you might have. So the first thing you may notice if you've been to Lead Center's site before is the site is cross-branded. It's very complementary to Lead Center's site. And at any time while you're on the site, you can click on the Lead Center logo, and that will take you back to the Lead Center site.
Excuse me, Chris, it's Rebecca. I don't think that your screen is being shared. We're not seeing it.
Okay, I'm seeing it on the participant screens as well.
I see it.
You are? Okay.
Yep, Danielle says it's going. Okay, so back to the Employment First site. And just as a side note, the site is fully responsive, so this can be accessed via any device. Obviously, it's easiest to access on a computer with a full-size monitor, but it is fully accessible and it will adjust to any size screen. Now, what you're seeing in front of you is you see a map, a national map, and then you see some national snapshot data. Now, this is just the highest level data points that have been entered into this system in a very, very small portion of the data that's here. But I'll read on the right-hand side here, I'll read just the top one, and this is 2012 number of people with disabilities, all disabilities age 16 to 64, and that number is 20,062,920. And that is an aggregate of all the state data that has been entered. So this is a dynamic system, and as it changes and as data gets entered, it automatically updates. And this will always show the most recent year of data that has been entered. So currently 2012 is the most recent data available. I think very shortly 2013 will be available. And for each data point, you can also see the percent change from the previous year, from the most recent 2 years of data that have been entered into this system. I won't read every one of those data points to you because they're right there on your screen. But now I'm going to go back over to the map, and as we scroll over the states, what you'll see is those same data points. So you can very quickly, at a glance, see how each state contributes to that national data. And we'll get into some much more comprehensive view of the data in a moment. But this is just a nice feature to allow you to see those top-level data points. And if you click on any of these states, it'll take you right to that state's full profile. So now let's go up to the main navigation. As you heard me mention, we have national data, and we'll get to that in a second. We have the state profiles, and that's the full information available for each state. We have state comparisons, and what this allows us to do, it allows us to do a very targeted data comparison between up to 3 states for any given year for a particular data category. And again, I'll show you that specifically a bit later on. And then we have advanced search. And while the state comparison is to compare the data, the advanced search allows you to search all of the state actions that have been entered into this system, or the legislation and the other resources. So you can do a very, very targeted search, very, very useful feature. You'll also see on the right-hand side a general text search, so you can do a keyword search overall on the site. You see a print this page icon, and you see a contact us button, and we'll show those a little bit later. So now we're going to move on to the national data, and I'm going to click on that, and the page is going to take a couple seconds here to load because it's quite a bit of data, and you'll see that in a minute hopefully here. But again, this national data set is it's an aggregate of all the state data that has been entered. And I apologize, it's taking a little bit longer to load, but it's an aggregate of all the state data that has been entered. And social dynamics, the social dynamics team, has done a wonderful job of getting all that data entered in there. So let's.
And let me just interject while we're going through that. Having a little glitch here. The primary sources of data are government agencies, usually the federal agencies with the exception of IDD data, which we're getting at the state level. But you'll see that in some sections we use multiple sources of data, and we're going to show you where the data comes from. We have citations throughout the website, and you'll be able to actually determine where each data point comes from. So this is due to the fact that different data points in each section are pulled from different sites for a given topic area. For example, if we go to a national snapshot and we look at the VR section, Vocational Rehabilitation Services, we'll show you RSA data that includes GIPRA measures and RSA core tables and RSA closure status tables. But we've also captured things like information on type of disability for VR customers to make sure information for both people with IDD, and those with other barriers to employment are represented. So let's go back to the national profile, and then we can maneuver ourselves to the state profile button and look at what we can get drilled down into a specific state. Chris, can you get us there?
Yep, I'm going back to it here in a second. Bear with me. Well, 1 second here, the site. I'm sorry, folks, bear with me 1 minute here. The site appears to have just gone down. So give me 1 minute here.
Hi, this is Nakia. We finally do have Serena on the line. So Serena, if you wanted to take this opportunity to speak a little bit. We did have Chris speak, but if you want to chime in now, that would be great.
Sure. Just while we're in this period of transition, going into screen sharing mode, it's our pleasure at ODEP to be working with such tremendous federal contractors, both at Social Dynamics and at OPERM, as well as our National Lead Center team, in rolling out what we think is a very important resource for sharing information to both to the public, to disability stakeholders, to state governments, and both state and federal policymakers related to the area of federal disability employment policy and how this is translating into the states. We are not aware personally at ODEP of any platform that is available online today that has the level of robustness and comprehensive data, both in terms of data points that are reported across several systems, but also the deep detail and analysis of what's going on in each of the states from a policy standpoint. And as the nation has seen more and more states adopt employment-first policies and strategies, it's important for us to be able to look and see what's happening in different states and be able to have an online resource that provides easy and free access to the public and to anybody who's interested in determining what's going on at a state level and also learning about different strategies and initiatives and approaches that are being applied at the states. And we have worked so closely. This is a 3-year project in the making. We've worked extremely closely with our colleagues at a federal level, with state governments on what they would find useful about this platform, and also with disability stakeholders about what they would find useful. And we're just really delighted to be rolling this out. I appreciate everyone's comfort or flexibility with us as we're still working out some kinks, and you guys are our early adopters. This is obviously, I'm sure Chris and Doug have mentioned, this will not be going live nationally until about a week from now. So this is our soft launch, and we're really delighted to be rolling this out and to get your all's initial feedback and thoughts about the utility of this platform moving forward. So I'm going to turn it back over to Chris Weaver now, because I see that it's back up and moving, and just really appreciate about this opportunity to basically launch NDEEM, our National Disability Employment Awareness Month, off with a bang with such a rich and comprehensive online policy and data platform. So Chris, I'll turn it back over to you.
Thanks, Serena, and apologize everybody there. I appreciate your patience. So we'll pick it back up from the national data page. And as you heard me mention earlier, this is the very robust data set, and this is an aggregate of all the state data that's been entered. And this data is organized categorically by top-level category, and it's always going to show by category the most recent 3 years of data, so you can kind of see the progression that's available. So I'm going to read to you the data categories as we go down. We've got general data, and then the Bureau of Labor Statistics, SSA outcomes, mental health outcomes, Wagner-Peiser outcomes, workforce development outcomes, VR outcomes, IDD outcomes, oops, I don't scroll very evenly, do I? Educational outcomes, Ability One JWAD program, and wage and hour division outcomes. So as you can see, it's a very, very comprehensive data set. And each category has its sources listed, so you can, if you really want to drill into where that data came from, each one you can click on that and go straight to it. You can do that with each category as you see fit. So, Doug, did you want to talk a little bit more about the national data?
Yeah, I just wanted to mention that there are something like 75 data points. I don't know if Chris mentioned that already. And when we actually pull the data in, there are actually thousands of data entry fields that will enter the information in. So it comes from, we get the information from a number of different sources, we bring it together, and here, you know, one of the most important things about doing this kind of analysis is that you need to know where your data comes from in order to use it. So if you're using this information, you want to reference all of the information that you create if you're going to do a report based on this system. So one of the things that we've gone painstakingly into is to really track the websites that the information comes from so that people can really do a legitimate descriptive analysis using the data in the system. Chris?
Thanks, Doug. And with that, we will go to the state profiles. And what you see here is just a listing of states. Now, you can get to the state profile from the map, as I mentioned, on the home page, or you can come here and click on the specific state profiles. And what you're going to see here, I'll start with Hawaii as an example. You're going to see just a real brief summary. And what this is kind of a whimsical way just to introduce each state before you get to the profile. And the idea here is that as the states get engaged, this will be a much more comprehensive summary of what's going on within that state with respect to employment first. So I'll read the Hawaii one to you. Disability is a respected part of diversity in the rainbow state of Hawaii, where employees with disabilities are saying aloha to new job opportunities across the state. So Richard, very well done on writing those. But we won't go to Hawaii. Let's go to Iowa. The motto of the state of Iowa is our liberties we prize and our rights we will maintain. For Iowans with disabilities, this includes the liberties that come with having a job and equal rights to real work for real pay. So let's go ahead and go to Iowa's full profile. And now this is going to take a few seconds to load, but it's a very comprehensive data set and information set for Iowa. And now what you see when you first get to the state page is you see that brief summary. Again, we hope that this will develop into a much more comprehensive summary of what the states are doing as the states get more engaged with the site. Then to the right, you see the snapshot, just like we saw on the home page for the national data, but it's specific to the state. Same data points displayed, also with the percent change for the most recent 2 years of data that's been entered in this system. So now let's go ahead and click on, you see the tabs, and these are specific to the state pages, and I'm going to start with the state data page. These are all the same data points as you saw on the national data page. I won't read them all back to you, but if I scroll down, you'll see, again, same way, same type of data, same structure, whereas the most recent 3 years of data for each category for this state are listed here, or are shown, I should say. And also the sources listed, because that sometimes can be specific for the state as well. So now, how this differs from the national data is we've also got policies and initiatives, many policies and initiatives that are state-specific that have been entered. A very, very large environmental scan was done by Social Dynamics, and just some great information. And it's organized by category. So I'll read those categories to you. They're on the tabs here for each state. Legislation, executive orders, policy, partnerships, system change grant efforts, training capacity building, consent decrees, and waivers. And again, this is altogether, it's a compendium of policies and initiatives across the state that have happened. And I'll start off on the legislation tab. And I believe, Danielle, are you going to describe a little bit about these initiatives and policies?
Yes, I am. Can everybody hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, perfect. So as Chris mentioned, there are multiple tabs in what we're calling the state profile. So all of the tabs at the top are making up a comprehensive profile for each individual state. So I'm going to take some time to cycle through all of the different tabs just to give you an example of what a state could look like and what kind of information may be included in each profile. So Chris is already on the legislation tab. And as a part of our environmental scan, we scoured state legislative sites to find any employment first legislation in addition to any information related to competitive community-based employment and living for people with disabilities. So as you can see here, in Iowa we found the Iowa SF 505, which is an asset development bill that makes it easier for people with disabilities to create and maintain savings accounts. So it allows them to collect financial assets over time. Okay, Chris, if you could go to the next tab, which is the executive orders.
Sure, Danielle, did you want to talk a little bit about the specific data tags for each one in the citation?
Sure, I'm going to do that actually in the next tab there. Because I think it provides a more robust example there. But here is the, we found one executive order for Iowa, which is the Executive Order 27. And what is a really interesting feature for the website is that if a date is available for when a policy or a legislative bill was enacted, you can see the date there. So you will see that right beside the title there. So that was enacted in 2003. As Chris was mentioning, I'd like to describe the detailed functions on this page. And it's not only on this page, obviously, it's every policy, practice, and state initiative entered into the system. So below the summary of whatever policy or initiative is being displayed, you'll find three different categories. So the first one is the systems, and these are systems that are explicitly identified in the policy or initiative, and it's an agency. So it can be mental health, it can be IDD, it could be workforce development. There are 5 different agencies that we used to categorize for this particular portion here in the systems. Below systems, you'll see topics, and these are topics covered in the specific policy or initiative or partnership or in the systems change effort or what have you. And these key terms can be used to filter the information in the advanced search, and as Chris said, we will explore that a little bit later. The last feature here on the page is citations, and these are links that will take you to the material included in the summary. So Chris, actually, can you go ahead and click on that citation? And so this is the actual executive order that the summary is describing on the previous page. It's a beautiful example of a publicly available employment first executive order. So it's a really great demonstration of what you can find in the citation tab. Okay, Chris, could you take us to the next tab there, which is policies. So through our environmental scan, we found in Iowa 3 government agencies that had employment first related policies and statements. You can view the titles of the policies in their summaries as well as the relevant systems, topics, and citations below. So I'm not going to go through each of them there, but you'll see it's the same kind of setup there, and you can see the different systems that are included. There are many systems, especially in the first one there. All right, next up we have partnerships. So the evaluation team gathered information on government agency partnerships that were dedicated to furthering the Employment First initiatives in their states. Partnerships noted in this tab also include those cross-agency collaborations that foster general community-based employment for people with disabilities, even if they're not specifically identified as Employment First partnerships. For Iowa, we found evidence of 3 partnership initiatives, including the Iowa State Leadership Employment Network. All right. We'll now move to systems change grant efforts. This part of the profile captures information on systems change grant efforts designed to further competitive community-based employment for people with disabilities. So each state is really diverse in the agencies funding the different sorts of grants, obviously, and the state agencies receiving the grants. Iowa had publicly available, again, because all the information that we collected was through an environmental scan, so it was only information that we could actually find on our own, not information given to us by the states. But so Iowa had publicly available evidence of a number of systems change grant efforts, including the Iowa Employment First Initiative, which is down at the bottom. Chris, could you go ahead and scroll all the way down for me? Oh, it was down. Oh, no, I'm sorry. There it is, Iowa Employment First Initiative. Great. Could you click on the citation there? So Iowa's provided access to their Employment First Statement of Findings. This one's from 2011. And this document highlights the history, mission, and vision of Employment First in Iowa, and it provides an overview of the initiative goals and partnerships formed to carry out the initiative. So again, this is another example of what you can find in the citation tab, and so Iowa actually had some good information actually available on Employment First, which was great. Okay, Chris, could you take us to the Training and Capacity Building tab? Perfect. Evidence of training and capacity building efforts was actually probably one of the hardest categories to collect information on, but Iowa had reference to 3 different kinds of training and or capacity building efforts. So I'd like to draw attention to the Iowa Employment First webinars, because this was also a great example of what some states are providing publicly for people to access so they could get an idea of what's going on in their state in Employment First. So Chris, if you could go down to the bottom for me again. Right, and go ahead and click on that citation. It's great because what they've done is they've made available their TNTA webinars. So these webinars include information on customized employment, parental involvement, and employment best practices for people with disabilities, all right there for anybody to access, which was really interesting to find, and they're even by year as well. So that information is out there for people to access. All right, the next tab we have is the consent decrees. Now, sometimes because the information that we're looking for had to be publicly available, we may not have been able to find evidence of a consent decree or a policy or initiative, and this is the case for Iowa. We weren't able to find one, but maybe in the future we'll be able to add something to this tab. The last tab that we have is waivers. In the waiver tab, we noted HCBS waivers and programs connected to waivers, HCBS waivers, and this includes the Iowa Brain Injury and Iowa Intellectual Disability waiver. And in the summary, you will find that they do talk about provision for community-based living and employment, which is why they were included in this portion of the profile. Now, Chris is going to take us through a more detailed example of the state comparison feature. Chris?
Thanks, Danielle. And at any point in time when you're on a state profile, you can just simply go over here. If you want to do a full state comparison, you can just jump to another state, whatever state you'd want to, and hop right to it. But speaking of state comparisons, we'll go to that tab, and what this allows you to do, this is pretty straightforward and self-explanatory, but what this allows you to do, this function allows you to compare up to 3 states by category, by year. So we'll just jump right in and compare some states. We looked at Iowa, so let's use Iowa, and then let's also choose Rhode Island, and we'll use, let's use Washington. There we go, and the data we'll select is mental health outcomes, and then let's select 2011. So I hit apply, and what this is going to do is this is just going to generate a side-by-side comparison for those 3 states for that category for that year. So just very useful little tool for quickly looking within a specific category for that year to be able to compare 3 states. And if you wanted to, from there, you can just click on the state to jump back to that full state's profile. And you can very quickly and easily adjust that. So if you want to, for example, use the same 3 states, but switch to SSA outcomes, and let's switch to 2010 and hit apply, that is going to very quickly generate that 3-state comparison. Now, one thing I'll demonstrate quickly here is the print feature. At any point I wanted to, I can go ahead and hit print, and this will allow me, if I want to print something real quick and show somebody or run to a meeting, real quick and easy way to print this information and have it handy to share with someone. So I'll cancel out of that. And so that's the state comparison feature. Again, pretty self-explanatory, but we'd love to have folks use that and let us know what they think.
And let me just interject, Chris. You know, one of the things that we hope to do as we move forward is to collect information over a period of time. So we actually will have some cross-sectional, longitudinal or repeated cross-sectional design kinds of things that we can do through the system and kind of look at how things have changed over time. So that's something that maybe in our future, and we're hoping to do that.
Great, thanks, Doug. So now we'll go to the advanced search. And again, while the state comparison focuses on the data, the advanced search focuses on the policies, initiatives, state actions that have been entered. Now, what you see when you first start this page, and I'll just highlight this right here, is that there are 926 records to start with in here. So these guys have entered a ton of information in this system, and that will obviously only continue to grow. But the power in this function is in the facets and the filtering. You can drill down in real time very quickly and easily and build a customized search by category. So let's start with the state policies and initiatives. You'll remember these are the tabs that were listed across each state page. So let's say we want to first, there's 926 records, we want to start out with partnerships. So we're going to narrow that down, and that's going to narrow in real time, and now it's only displaying 175 records that were in the category of partnerships. Now let's say we want to look at partnerships that were that the Medicaid agencies were involved in. So now it's going to further filter it down, and we're down now looking at roughly 25 records. And again, it's listed by state by those actions in alphabetical order. Now let's drill down just a little further, and let's pick a topic this time. So let's go with partnerships related to, or that were involving Medicaid agencies relating to self-employment. And that is going to get us down to 2. So we could look at either one of these very quickly and easily. I'll just click on the Idaho one, and this gives you, again, the details as you saw Danielle showed earlier, but this gives you the details of that specifically related to this state action. So now I'm going to go back, and then I'm going to hit, at any point I can unclick one to go back to the previous level. So I'll unclick self-employment, and that gets us back to those 25 records related to partnerships where Medicaid agencies were involved. So I'm going to hit reset, and that'll take us back to the full record set. So now we'll be back to 926 records. And one more thing I'll show you here is we can get a little more targeted with this search, and let's start with a keyword. So we'll use the word children. So let's search and see what's in there for that. And our keyword search yielded 24 results with children. Now from there, we can drill down. So as you can see, this gave us 24 records, but now we can use these categories to drill down within that. So let's say within that record set, let's select policy. So now, using the keyword children, there were 3 state actions related to policy, and I can click on any one of those and take a quick look at that. Let's look at North Carolina Transition Services. And I won't read the details to you, but very quickly and easily, you could drill down and get to the information, hopefully, that you need to get to. So I'm going to hit reset there, and that'll get us back to our full record set. And the final feature that I'll demonstrate, that's pretty much it for the advanced search. Again, pretty self-explanatory, but hopefully very, very useful for everyone. I'm going to click on the Contact Us button, and if there's anything that, if there's any information that's missing, if anything's inaccurate, please feel free to click on that Contact Us form and let us know who you are and let us know what your question or what your comment is, and shoot that to us, and we'd love to hear from you. And this will go to more than one person. So we'd love to hear from you, and that is just about it for the overall site demonstration. But I know that we have a number of questions that have come in. Serena, do you want to start off with any of those questions?
Absolutely, I'd be happy to. We've got a really live and interactive audience today, which is fantastic, and it shows me that people are seeing the real potential here. So I just want to go back to a few questions that we've taken during this conversation, because I'm sure it's on, some of these are on other people's minds as well. And please continue to submit questions, and we will continue to float them. So one question early on in the presentation was where are we getting the sources for the data that we've pulled together? And there's kind of 2 different trajectories that the team took, and I believe that the folks highlighted this, but I'll just touch on them again briefly. The first is on the actual data points, so the 75+ numbers and data endpoints that we've called. Those all came from federally reported data that one or more state systems report in, typically on an annual basis, with the exception of the wage and hour data, which I believe is updated quarterly. And so we will, another question was whether, how often will we, ODEP and the National Lead Center and our wonderful contract team on the phone, be updating the data? And the answer is that we will be updating each of these different sections annually at the time that the new data is released. So in other words, if the RSA 911 data is updated in, let's say, February of next year, but the Wagner-Peiser data isn't updated until May, that's fine. We'll be updating the RSA data first in real time, and then we'll go right into the Wagner-Peiser data. The other place that we get the sources of information related to the state profiles is through a very arduous, comprehensive information gathering and research process through online web searches based on a number of terms and a very comprehensive methodology that our amazing evaluation and research team designed and worked in concert with ODEP to develop. And those profiles are updated quarterly at a state level. And so they are constantly, we know that states are very active right now, that there's a lot going on in this field. And so we want this to be as current as possible in terms of identifying new strategies and initiatives and partnerships that states are embarking upon. And so at least for the time being, meaning for the next couple of years, the state profiles will be updated quarterly. Another key question in line with that came out is there were a couple of questions about, hey, if we see something that's missing here, or we're updating a policy and we want to make sure it's added, or even if we just see something that we think is inaccurate, where do we give that feedback, and can we add updates? And the answer is yes. We see this as a novel way to really create an ongoing dialogue and partnership at a local and state and federal level. And so this platform is only as successful as its usability and accuracy. We need all of you to keep us honest and to make sure and keep us updated. I will say that one of our limitations is that when we do our research, we really created the parameter that all of the pieces and elements that would be created in the online state profiles had to be accessible via another public website. And so a lot of you state people that are on the phone today might be looking at us and say, well, we've got a policy on employment of people with disabilities, and it's not on here. And my question would be, is it publicly available? Because a lot of state policies, ironically, are not. Another thing that we ask you to do is to make sure if you send something to us that you want added, make sure it's 508 compliant, and make sure that you send the publicly available web link to it. And that way, everyone has kind of a key standard for providing information. But we anticipate getting a lot of feedback, and what we hope this will do is encourage state governments and state cross-agency partnerships to be even more open and forthcoming and transparent about all the great work they're doing, that they're going to want to use this as a way to brag and to highlight some of their efforts in this field, and also to spur an ongoing national dialogue about how we can do things better and, you know, what's going on in one state that maybe we could do in another state. And so those are just a few of the key questions so far. I'm looking at...
And Serena, while you're looking through those questions,
sure.
One thing I'll just mention is that you'll notice we had a technical difficulty earlier. That actually happened as a result of everybody hitting the site at once when we sent the link out. It's fixed and it's already back up on the Lead Center servers, but that's a great test of what we're doing here. So thank you everyone for checking the site out.
Absolutely. Also, I had to check with our IT gurus. We had a great question of, you know, what's the capacity? How many people can log on to the site or take advantage of this platform at once? And our awesome National Lead Center team's response is, in theory, it should be able to accept and handle as many users as necessary. And so my response to that is, let's give it a shot, you know, and let's really get this out into the public domain and really share this wonderful resource and have people using it. We've worked really hard on this, and we really are committed to making it even stronger over the next year. We've already received some great feedback behind the scenes from many of our subject matter experts across the country, as well as some of our federal agency partners about additional data they'd like us to incorporate into the system. And so we anticipate this will continue to grow, and we want people to use it because we've worked really hard on it.
Serena, there was one question I think I can answer that came through. It was a little bit of a technical question.
Sure.
And that was about the search features, the search feature site-wide search. And just to clarify, it is, but it only searches the employment first sub-site. You'll notice it is a subdomain, employmentfirst.leadcenter.org. It does not search Lead Center site. It only searches the employment first site. So just a good point of clarification.
Great clarification, Chris. Thanks for making that. Now, the Lead site does have its own search feature as well, but that's separate and distinct from this. This is like a sub-platform built within the larger Lead Center domain. Additionally, I believe there was a question about FY, what FY means, and yes, it's federal fiscal years. And it does, the timing varies obviously from source to source on how these are, when these things are reported, which I spoke to earlier. And our intention is that as soon as a new federal report comes out, that we will be updating it. Now, you'll see on this that the census data, for example, is probably probably out of date by a year if you're looking at this closely. And the response to that is that when we were building the site and putting the data in this summer, a couple of key reports came out. For example, the ICI's State Data Report, also known famously as the Blue Book, is one that we included in here. It's one of the few non-federal national data sources that we use because, as all of you know, the IDD system does not have a federal reporting infrastructure. And so that came out this summer, the newest one. The census report was updated this summer. But by then, we had already computed the most recent data that we had at that time into this. So the very next thing we're doing as soon as this goes live late next week is in October, our awesome team is going to be looking at any additional reports that came out this summer and updating the data to reflect those new things as well.
Hey, Serena, we got a great question about asking about data export from this site. Do you want to tackle that one?
I would love it if you could tackle it.
Well, the site is not intended to be a data source per se. It's intended to be a place where everyone can go and view this great compendium of information and these data points, but it's not intended to be an actual data export source. Where that comes into play are the sources. So as you may remember from the national data page, under each category, we list the source of that data, and you can go right to that source and actually get the data itself if you want to, as it's available. But that's not, this site in and of itself is not intended to be that type of resource.
I'm so glad you raised that as well, because one thing we didn't want to do, we were very intentional in the design of this in that we didn't want to reinvent the wheel. We have several federal partners that have very robust, in-depth research and reporting systems that can be researched and queried, and you can do all of that exciting longitudinal research or comparisons that you may be interested in. And that really wasn't the purpose of this. Our purpose was really to say, hey, we need to acknowledge that there are multiple systems in this space, and they're all reporting specific outcomes related to disability employment that need to be culled and kind of brought together in some form or fashion. And so we believe this is a stepping stone in that direction of really helping both at a national level and at a state level for us to be even more thoughtful in our ongoing dialogues about cross-systems change and what that looks like, really understanding our respective systems. I know that I came from the kind of Medicaid, Medicare arena and terminology, so when I came into the workforce investment arena, it was like a whole new foreign language and set of performance measures and activities and really culture to get my hands around. And we're hoping that this site helps facilitate additional conversations about some of our mutual priorities and objectives across systems and a better understanding about how we can braid resources and coordinate services to really effectuate the best outcomes possible for our common customers.
We got a little clarification on the one question about exporting. They're asking about printing and exporting like a compilation of results. And Kelly, thanks for that question. That's something in terms of being able to print a compilation, like as in for an entire state or an entire search results set. That's something that, excuse me, we're going to look at in the next phase. But great question. That was a question that's been raised outside of this venue as well. So great question. And as hopefully I demonstrated, either a small data set or maybe resource by resource or a list of titles as you drill down. You can print that. You can use the print this function that's on every page to do it. I know it's not quite what you're looking for, but give us a little time. We'll get there.
Yeah, and as you're playing around with this site, as you have insights and more questions, please keep them coming, because we see this as an evolving platform, and we really do anticipate making several enhancements over the next year within reason. We got a great question about how do we determine the number of individuals with disabilities in a state, and there was a recognition that there are a whole lot of people with disabilities not currently being served through HCBS waivers or receiving SSI or SSDI, Social Security income or Social Security disability income. And you're right. And so the way we've looked at the number of people with disabilities is by taking that information from the U.S. Census report. So that's where we've received this information. Again, there's some questions about how to get information onto the site. So one thing that we are contemplating and working towards over this next year is creating a password-protected feature that would allow state governments to actually update their own state profiles. Now, the exception would be the data points, because we pull those from federal reports and federal systems upon which the state governments report the data. So we would not have them change those, but we would like for them to be able to constantly update and change the state profiles. We don't quite have that feature in yet, or that level of sophistication. So right now you've got the comment feature. If you could just show them that again one more time, Chris, their ability to make a comment. You can go in here and do a quick comment with your name, email, address, and subject. And you can put your message in there saying, please add to the following file, this, or to the following tab, this file. And just give us the title that you want, and make sure you give us a publicly accessible web link to that document, and make sure that document is 508 compliant. And we will get back to you in short time and confirm for you that that has been done.
Hey, Serena, there was one question that came up about distinction between the data individuals with physical disabilities versus intellectual developmental.
Right, and I might have missed that in the chat. So I apologize if I read over that one. Oh, here we go. Is there distinction in the data? So we have pulled data where we could. For example, the VR system. Could you go to the national data profile again for a second, Chris?
Sure.
Yeah, perfect. No problem. What we've been able to do, go ahead and go down to VR. That's a great example. So where we were able to find data that was stratified by disability status, we did try to pull those points. And the RSA 911 data is a great example through the VR system because it does stratify by number of people with communicative impairments, with visual impairments, physical disabilities, cognitive disabilities, psychosocial disabilities, mental disabilities, et cetera. And so for those, we were able to pull some of the numbers. Additionally, with respect to the IDD information, which is right below that, Chris, if you want to pull down maybe just a little farther, this is specific just to the IDD population in terms of what is reported. I should say, as a clarification here, only about 25% roughly of individuals with IDD are tapped into the systems where, we would be able to capture this data. So it's only about a fourth of the people out there. There's so many people out there that we're not capturing outcome data on, and that's a much larger national dialogue that needs to take place. But nevertheless, we are able to pull out IDD. We also pulled out for mental health, which I think is a little higher above this. We've got some mental health outcomes around supported housing and supported employment that are reported into SAMHSA, the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration. So where we could decipher some of this data and stratify it by disability, we did. In many of the systems, including workforce investment, for example, is a great example, they don't stratify by subcategory of individuals with disabilities. It's all just disability. So, so we're limited in terms of how far we can do that. I believe there was a question about state footnotes, and I think this is a great question and something we should make sure we incorporate, is whether or not we can incorporate state footnotes about their data or explanations of data the state may have sent in with their data to explain potential outliers. We currently don't have a tab just for those explanations right now, but I don't see any reason why we couldn't consider how to add those footnotes into their state data reports. And if you scroll down just a little bit, Chris, we could conceivably, right where we do footnotes or where we put the resources underneath each of the state data systems, we could conceivably add an additional footnote relatively easily. Of course, I say that, but I'm not the IT guru, but I assume we could put in those types of points of information and clarification relatively easily. And again, you know, we really want to hear from states in particular about, you know, if they see the utility in this, what's the utility for them, and what excitement they have about it, but also what constructive feedback or concerns they'd like to share.
And Serena, you just got a repeated question about is the site up where a state can look at its data? And yes, employmentfirst.leadcenter.org. The site is actually live now as we speak. We're just making it available to a limited audience at this time for testing purposes until the full-blown launch in a week. So that's employmentfirst.leadcenter.org.
Yeah, and actually I will just put that into here as well so that folks see that and can access that on their own time. I also see some additional clarification on the suggestion on the longitudinal, and that is just, it is a limitation of this. We only go back to the 3 most recent years of the data. And we do that because primarily from a policymaker's point of view, they want to see some trend analysis from the most recent 3 years or period of time. And we do not at this time anticipate expanding that at this point. But that doesn't mean, you know, we can't consider it in the future. But at this point, we really want to keep this easy, user-friendly, and just really entice people who do want to go a level deeper from an academic or research or to inform public policy standpoint to really do a deeper dive in some of the federal reporting systems that we have extrapolated this information. And we hope that you will use this in your policy efforts to inform your policymakers at a state level. If you are state policymakers, to inform your work directly, and really in some ways maybe to change up the dialogue a little bit in your state about what seems to be working or working well, and maybe some areas that there's room for additional discussion and ideas. Okay, I think we've answered all of the questions so far. I don't know if there's any interest from folks in us doing maybe another. I'd kind of like to do. Oh, I'm sorry. I guess we're wrapping it up. I'm looking.
No,
at the
Serena, I'm sorry. I just pulled the screen sharing off real quick because we demoed the site. I'm sorry. I just went back to the slides.
I thought it would be nice just to maybe do a couple of other search runs since we have time and we haven't gotten any other questions right yet. Maybe it would be good just to look at the search piece related to some of the search terms that we used. So can you go back to the website?
Give me a second.
No problem. No problem. Oh, someone says that they received an error message on the when they try to go directly to the site themselves.
Oh, it may have gone back down again. So we apologize for that, but we'll work with the lead center to make sure that load balancing can handle everyone's browsing the site.
A comment has been made about the Blue Book or the state data report, in that when we go in, actually, if you can go to the national data for just a second. And I think this is a really good point, and we should make this clear and fix this. So go on down to the IDD again. The point was made that the dollar amounts, here we go, oh, perfect, that the dollars spent, that these are, says, therefore, it says there's missing reference to those numbers being reported in thousands, that these are, that the dollar amounts that were reported in the report is actually thousands, and so we need to reflect that. So we'll definitely double check that and make sure that, I mean, obviously we're spending more than $695,000 a year in day and employment services under IDD. So that is a really good catch, and we'll definitely be making that immediately. So I just wanted to do maybe a couple of other search runs real quick, and as we get other questions, and thanks to Dwayne Shamonte for pointing that one out. That's the kind of thing where if you see something and you think, you know, that's wrong or we need to do something better, please let us know. So we did, if you could just scroll down to the topics a little bit, Chris. As you'll see, we spent a lot of time thinking about what are some of the key topics that states would be particularly interested in making sure there was information on. So 14C, income security. We've got a tag for asset development, financial capability, our cross-agency collaboration partnerships, customized employment, data sharing, employer engagement, home and community-based services, mental health, provider transformation, resource leveraging, school-to-work transition, segregated day and employment services, and self-employment. Right now, those are our key topics. Now, obviously, you can also put keywords in this search, too, but I just wanted to bring those to people's attention because we felt those were really great tags to label each of these policies and documents that are inside the state profiles as a way to help those folks that did want to pull and see, you know, what other things are out there around cross-agency collaboration, for example. So actually, if we go to provider transformation, could you just click on that for a moment? You know, this pulls together all of the policies and initiatives we have to date around that particular topic. And again, as we've shown in the earlier reiterations, you can bring that down even farther by system. So if we wanted to go to maybe Department of Mental Health, we could do that and bring it down even further, and so on and so forth. So I just wanted to bring it up again to really encourage people to play with that for a while. It's a great way to do a really quick search of the various resources that are available across states, across the state profiles, so that you don't get maybe overwhelmed if you're coming in and you want to know what's going on in all the states in a specific area. This is a really, I think, valuable way to get a pretty strong representative list of that information. I don't know if you all want to add anything on that. I think you did a great job earlier, but to me, it's one of the most exciting features about this platform.
I think just a reminder that they can use the keyword search first if they want. If they don't want to search by the facets that are already there, the categories and terms that are there, they can use their own keyword search and then drill down from their keyword, which we displayed it, so no need to show it again, but just a reminder.
So there's a lot of ways to play with this and use it for your efforts. Again, it is a work in progress, and we really want to qualify that. We're very excited about the release of this, mainly for two reasons, because A, we believe it will bridge stronger conversations across stakeholders and hopefully encourage state governments and their respective stakeholder constituencies to share more information about what they're doing with the rest of the world. But second, we're excited to launch it finally because we've been working for a long time, and sometimes when you get really close to a big project like this, you miss things, just like the point that Dwayne made a couple of moments ago. And so we're excited to get more eyes on this nationally. I'm a little nervous and overwhelmed by the idea that we may get numerous feedback, but we're excited about it, and we do want and benefit greatly from the feedback that people can provide to this. So we hope that you will use this as a collective resource and think of it like that, and think about collectively contributing back to us feedback so we can make it better. On that note, we may be able to end early. I don't want to, I certainly don't want to minimize the time, but I would like to give our Lead Center folks an opportunity as well, and also our team an opportunity to talk about where you can send information related to the website. So I'll turn it back over to you all.
Yeah, I'll just, thanks, Serena. I'll just mention here that in addition to the contact form that's on the site, if you have any questions or comments at all about the site, you can send those comments to efirst@socialdynamics.com. That's ST@socialdynamicsllc.com. Or you can just use the contact form on the site. It goes to the same place, essentially. And Doug Clayman and Danielle Herbert's contact information are listed here as well. And I think we're going to turn that over to Rebecca. Did you want to pick up from here?
Before that, I'm sorry, if I could mention one other thing on a question that came through, because I think it's an important one. You may go onto a state profile and see that for some of your data points or for a specific year in an area, it says NA for not applicable, and be wondering why that's the case for your state. And there could be a number of reasons. We are considering kind of a new coding on those to denote either A, was the data point captured in a prior year? Sometimes you have new data points, and we'll see this a lot in the workforce investment arena with WIOA implementation, that the RSA data and the Wagner-Peiser and workforce investment system data may look really different in a year or two from now compared to where they are today. And so the data points reflected may have that. So there's that as an issue. Sometimes the state, for whatever reasons, may not have reported that data for a specific year. And then there's the other issue of the fact that sometimes the reporting that comes out is not completely comprehensive of everything that all the states have reported. And so, again, this is a limitation that we have based upon the federal resources we're using, and we are thinking about a better way to denote what is going on with each of those areas so that when you see a data element that's not showing up for your specific state on a certain year, that you'll have a better reference point or explanation as to why. So I'm sorry, I just wanted to share that final thought with the last question that came in. Chris, I'll turn it back over to you all and Rebecca.
And hi, it's Rebecca. Thank you, Serena, and thank you to Social Dynamics and Alterum. This was a wonderful presentation and overview of this site that's an enormous contribution to the field. We're very excited about it being part of Lead Center's work, and really look forward to hearing from people as they use the site about ways that they've used it and suggestions for improvements as we go forward. We did include contact information for Lead Center as well, so you have the information from Social Dynamics and Alterum and how to provide comments for the site. These are the different ways that you can connect to the Lead Center and the Lead Center staff. You know, we thank you all for participating. I don't know if Chris Button might be interested in saying any final words following this wonderful presentation. Chris?
Sure, Rebecca. Thank you very much to our presenters. This was just absolutely amazing. I've gotten a couple of emails already here at ODEP of people very excited to dig in and start using this amazing portal. Thanks to our colleagues at Social Dynamics and Alterum and LEAD for making this available. We're so excited that through this web portal, people across the country will really be able to monitor what is going on in states. They'll be able to measure changes in the states, changes in numbers, changes in policies that are being passed and implemented. So it's just got such amazing potential. And thanks, of course, to Serena for her leadership and helping turn ODEP's Employment First evaluation data, because this information began being collected through our evaluation, and it just became so rich, we thought this just really should be made available to the country. So kudos to the whole team. It's just very exciting. Thanks, Rebecca.
No, thank you. And for people on the call, if you have colleagues who couldn't participate today, this will be archived next week on the Lead Center website at leadcenter.org, and a transcript of the discussion will be made available. So if you'd like to share that with any colleagues who weren't able to participate, you know, we just visit the Lead Center site next week, and you'll be able to link them to it. Thank you all for participating, and thanks again to ODEP for all their support of this wonderful work. Thank you.